Hello friends, I'm Brian, and this is Gizmo Board Games. Today I'm going to be reviewing Raiders of the North Sea by Garphill Games. Raiders of the North Sea is a worker placement game that is almost 10 years old now, so it's been a while, so I figured I'd go ahead and give it a Gizmo review. Doing it in my normal Gizmo format, but first starting with a little bit of how it's played. So in Raiders of the North Sea, you're first going to set up the board with all kinds of different plunder to pillage across the various parts of the sea where you are going to put your Vikings onto raids. In order to do that, first you're going to have to build up a little bit of a crew and collect some resources and things to do that. So the first part of the game is you're going to be placing workers down kind of in the village area, and then eventually you're going to be sending them out and pillaging the different areas. And the bigger your crew builds up, the more plunder you're going to get and the more points you're going to score. So the game is played, as I said before, in worker placement fashion. And if you're not familiar with that term, that just means you're going to put a worker somewhere on the board that isn't already covered by another worker, and then take the action of that placement. There's a little bit of twist on this worker placement game, though, because the normal worker placement, you're going to do that first. You're going to place a worker onto an open spot on the board and take that action. Then your second action is going to be to retrieve a worker from a different location and take that action as well. And that's the unique spin on worker placements. Most worker placements, you're just taking turns placing your workers. But this game, you don't really own any workers. You're just using the workers that are already there and then bringing back a worker to use for next turn. So you're only ever going to have one worker in hand at any given time, but you're going to get two actions every round for the most part. What are these worker placements places? Well, first you can go to somewhere to recruit more workers, more villagers into your deck of cards, your hand of cards. And you can use those in two ways at other worker placement places. You can either use them to build your crew up because you're going to need them to go help you raid and plunder villages to make yourself stronger and stronger as you go out. And they're also going to have various abilities depending on where you plunder or how you plunder or the makeup of your crew in general. So they're each going to have some special ability that they could do in the raid. But there is another worker placement place where you can discard a worker from your hand and then take its special action on the bottom right-hand side of the board, or on the bottom right-hand side of the card. And if you go to that place, you will take that action of the worker and get some additional benefit or bonus or whatever, maybe even screwing over your opponents with some of them. Or you can also go around to spots on the board to collect items, such as coins or provisions. You're going to need those to hire your workers and feed them when they're going out on voyages. And you can just use them to turn in gold, or for gold, because gold is a valuable resource as well, as you can imagine in life. You can also go to the armory and boost up your armor because that's going to help you go out and raid. The higher your armory score is, the more powerful your raid will be. And there are other places you can go, such as to the Longhouse, where you can turn in all the plunder you've gotten to score points on the offerings. So, just a bunch of different things. I don't think I covered them all, but it's for you to explore. But in general, you're going to go out and you're going to recruit workers by using your coins, and then you're going to send them on raids using your provisions and your crew. And the crew is a big thing because the crew is what's in your boat when you go out. And the strength of the crew plus the strength of your armor is going to be how well you can plunder and raid those bigger places. And you're going to start out raiding just the small nearby villages, but eventually you're going to be raiding the keeps far away. So you're going to need to build towards those. And when you go raid, you're going to also roll a die to see how much more value added. So it is a little bit of a risk reward. You can go out and guarantee a victory, or you can go out and hope that you roll well to add to that addition. So you're going to roll a 6-sided dice in addition to your attack value and your armor value when you go raid these places. Some places will even score two different ways depending on how well you're going out there and rolling, or not even rolling. Maybe you're going out there strong enough to begin with, but a lot of the places towards the end, you're going to also need to roll kind of higher too, and you're actually going to roll 2 dice at some of those places to add to your armor and crew values. And then if you roll high enough, when you've completed the raid, you're going to score more victory points. There's a victory points track based on how well you're scoring when you go out and plunder and raid, and you'll work up that track. Also, some places have Valkyrie tokens, and those Valkyrie tokens are going to kill off your crew and send them to Valhalla. And when they do that, you're going to move up the Valhalla track, and the higher up on that track you get, the more in-game points you're going to score. And the higher up your armor track, the more in-game points you're going to score as well there. So there's some track that you're racing down, not just victory points, but tracks. And I mentioned the offerings earlier. You're going to collect those by turning in plunder, because there are a bunch of different plunders you can use from your raids, and turn in those plunders for offerings or for other things along the way, as you'll see when you actually play the game. I'm not going to try to point out every little thing you can do. And that's the gist of the game. You play some workers early to gather up a crew and goods you're going to need, and they're going to send them out to plunder villages to get points and more booty. And as well as that, you're going to get more and more powerful workers, because there are 3 different colors of workers. There's black, gray, and white workers in this game. In some actions you can't even do without a white worker, but you can't get a white worker until you're raiding those more faraway lands. But as soon as somebody gets that worker and puts it on the board, guess what? Anybody can get that worker with their turn, because, again, like I said, one action is taking a worker back from a spot and taking that action. So if somebody played a white worker down to a spot, your next turn could be to take that worker with your second action, and now you've got the white worker used. So you don't necessarily have to be the one getting out there on those faraway raids to benefit from the white worker spots. And I like that. That's a neat push and pull. And at the end of the game, you're just going to see who scores the most from the treks and from their offerings and any other bonus objectives you might have from your crew in play, and see who rated the best at the end of the game. And that's a brief overview of how you play Raiders of the North Sea. Let's go ahead and get into my gizmo thoughts. So do I think the game is any good? I really do think the game is good. It's a nice entry-level worker placement game that you can probably teach to most people. There is some complexities in it and a lot of good thinking points for gamers, but it's easy enough to teach to new gamers. You go to a spot, you do that action, you retrieve from a spot, you do that action. Eventually you go raid spots and collect booty and points, and that's it. Every spot is laid out with a worker out on the faraway lands, and you're going to retrieve that worker after a raid. So again, you're going to place worker, retrieve worker situation. But in the instance of raids, you're not going to do anything with that second worker other than take it back. And usually it's a better powered worker, a gray worker or a white worker, which will give you more options when you go back to the village. But the gameplay, it's really good. It really flows. It plays pretty quickly. And I just enjoy that there's different options to do. You know, you don't necessarily have to be the one raiding the faraway lands to reap some of the benefits. Like I said, somebody brings back a white worker and plays it, you can use that white worker later. So you can just kind of collect goods and use your villagers basically to do a bunch of the actions. In the end, you are still going to need to go, raid. It is Raiders of the North Sea. But you won't have to do it maybe if you don't want to do it as often. You don't have to. There are other options for you to score and score decently well as well. So I like the gameplay. It's easy, it's fun, it's smooth, and it makes sense thematically that, you're gathering raiders, put them on ships, and sending them out to do what Vikings do. It's just enjoyable. Good little gameplay. What do I think of the ingredients? I really like them. They're good, solid wood, cardboard components, good wood meeples. I like the 3 different colors. They have different abilities, different things you can do depending on which color worker you play, or some places you can't even place a worker unless it's white or gray worker. So those spots won't open up till later in the game because those workers are a little bit harder to come by. But if you build toward them, you'll be the first one to take advantage of them. But then they're, again, like I said, in play for everybody. So I like those components. The art by the Miko, I believe, in this case, is really neat. He's got his distinctive style that really lends itself well to the Viking theme. And it looks good. Every character in this game, every villager is different. Every little bit of land on the game board is different and nice. But it's clean. It's all really clean and simple, but very, very nice. So I like the ingredients for this one. Is it easy to play? Yes, I think it is pretty easy to play. It does involve some thought and planning for the future. So if that's not something you want to do, is try to plan 2 and 3 turns in advance as you gather resources and use your villagers to set yourself up for later. Then it might be a little more complex. But in general, you're placing a worker, doing a thing, picking a worker, doing a thing, raiding a village, getting points and plunder, and just trying to manipulate how and the timing of doing that adds a little bit of the complexity. But again, I feel like I could teach this to any entry-level gamer and they'll pick it up and enjoy it. More of it. Do I want more of it? Is there a variety in the game? Is there enough to keep me wanting to come back? Well, I like the flow of the game. You get variety of how you're distributing the plunder around to the various places. So, you might have a bunch of Valkyrie at the earlier spots, so early on you're killing off your crew and you got to adjust for that. Or they could all be later in the game and it's not a big deal. You can keep sending out the same crew over and over again. But without the expansions, and I haven't played with the expansions yet, I only have one of the 2 of them that are even available. I haven't, like I said, played with them yet, so I'm just judging the base game. It could get, I guess, a little bit repetitive because in the end you're going to the same 6 or 7 village spots and then you're raiding the same 20 or so areas out there on the board to raid and bring them back plunder. You could find yourself kind of getting samey after a while, but I feel like that's fine. The variety comes from A, where the plunder's out on the board, and B, what your opponents are doing around the board. That could change things up in the timing of when different areas get raided. Plus, there's a good stack of villager cards, so you could be playing with a different crew every single time as well. I think there's enough out there to keep it pretty fresh overall, but not a whole lot of variability outside of where the plunder falls and how the cards are shuffled. It's enough for me though. I like it. Originality. Is it original? I like the worker placement originality. The place a worker, pick up a worker. That is very, very original, especially 9 years ago when this came out. I don't think anybody else was doing that. I think this was one of the first games that did worker placement different. You're not placing your workers on the board and then retrieving them at the end of the round. You're placing any worker on the board and then retrieving any worker from the board. They're not your workers. They are the village's workers. So I like that aspect. That is very original. The Viking theme, not original at all. It's been done over and over again. Vikings go up, they raid, they pillage, they come back with booty, you get points. That's not original. Nothing original about the theme. But the play style, I think, is very original. Kudos, hats off to, I believe it was Shim Phillips and Sam McDonald on this one. Let me double check here. No, it looks like it was just Shim Phillips on this one. So just Shim Phillips on the game. Very well designed. Very innovative with the take a worker, place a worker, take a worker, worker placement actions. Like the fact that there is some luck involved with the dice rolling when you go out and pillage, but you can totally mitigate it by just building up your crew and your armor to the point where all you're doing is rolling to see if you get the bonus points, but you're automatically going to get the good, at least some points out of the raid. I like the game flow. It's very nice, welcoming, easy, light to medium weight game that I really enjoy. And so let's get into my final thoughts. As I've mentioned before, I feel like I've gushed over the game quite a bit. I'm giving this a 4.5 out of 5 gizmos, or about an 8.5 on the BGG 8 out of 10 scale. It's very, very fun, very clean. I like the game. I like to put it on the table and introduce new players to worker placement in a theme that they can follow, and a game that flows quickly and easily, but with enough complexity and thinkiness that you've really got to plan out actions and hope you don't lose out on the raid you were working towards, but there are others on the board. Kind of that race to be the one to do the thing that you want to do. And I really appreciate it. I like everything that this game offers. And if you're not familiar with Raiders of the North Sea or with Garphill Games, I highly recommend checking this one out. It's worker placements with that little bit of a twist on it, and there's 2 expansions you can throw in to add to it, change it up, mix it up, whatever. Like I said, I haven't even got into that yet with the 1 expansion I do have, and it's been a fun, enjoyable game for me to teach and play with other people. That is Raiders of the North Sea from Garphill Games from 2015. If you like this review, give me a thumbs up. Subscribe below if you haven't already. If you've made it this far, I do appreciate it. Click the button, come back and catch me again for another review, another topic on board games, a countdown list, my thoughts in the industry, maybe some news and highlights if I don't normally know things ahead of time. But if there's something that I might know, I might discuss it too. Other videos, I try to put out at least 1 video a week, so there's always something for you to view that might catch your eye, or it might not, and you can pass it by and wait for the next one, but you won't know if you don't subscribe. Comment below if you've played Raiders of the North Sea. Let me know your thoughts on the game, your thoughts on this review, and your thoughts on anything at all in general. I don't care. It does help the algorithm when you comment, like, and subscribe. I appreciate it, and I will see you next time. Bye.